no reason for there to be a troop deployment in Oregon and hitting the Trump admin with a TRO, temporary restraining order. But of course, it's, we'll see if it's actually going to work or not, because it doesn't seem like Trump gives a shit and will try to push for a constitutional crisis at every step. So, that's where we're at right now. Let's take a look.
Overnight in a tense Oregon
and I gotta pee real quick as well.
Blocking President Trump's attempt to deploy members of the California National Guard into Portland, saying she was troubled by the Trump administration's attempt to circumvent an order she'd issued just a day earlier. Trump had already tried to send in Oregon National Guard troops to Portland. That was halted on Saturday. The administration then tried on Sunday to send the troops in from California. Then late last night, Judge Karen Immerget, a Trump appointee, issued a new, broader order prohibiting the administration from using federal control to send any state's National Guard into Oregon, and pressing the government's attorney, saying, quote, "You are an officer of the court. Do you believe that this is an appropriate way to deal with my order, or an order that a judge issues that you disagree with, or is that an appropriate mechanism to appeal as you have done?" Over the weekend, federal officers clashed with demonstrators at the ICE headquarters in Portland, firing pepper balls and flashbangs. Portland police say they did not observe any person or property crimes committed and no arrests were made. But the Trump administration insists violent criminals are destroying Portland and troops are necessary to protect federal assets and personnel. In a ruling Saturday, the judge wrote Portland's protests were not significantly violent or disruptive, and that Trump's description of them was simply untethered to the facts. That deploying the Oregon National Guard likely exceeded his constitutional authority.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Oh, it turns out I'm glad that there is still some semblance of order within the courts, and that Donald Trump's direct attacks against the judiciary has not shook many of these judges. In the same way that these justices at the Supreme Court are obviously totally corrupt. It's interesting to see when you have Trump appointees that are obviously from a conservative background, or even all the way down to Reagan era judges turning around and being like, dude, enough. You know what I mean? This is our job. Our job is to literally put a check on what you're doing. And it's very obvious that you are leading the country into an incredibly unstable place that will have repercussions that are long lasting. Now, of course, the top slot is still overtaken by these Christ-cucked crypto fascists who don't care about anything other than appeasing the interests of their masters, whether it be the Heritage Foundation or the Federalist Society, or just American capital in general. But this kind of stuff at least gives me a little bit of confidence that maybe, this is basically the last line of defense. Now, of course, you should not sit around and wait for the courts to properly adjudicate and defend your constitutional rights. You still need to show up. You still need to make a big fuss. You still need to showcase your discontent. And it works in unison. It works in tandem. You show up, you showcase your discontent, and then people are reminded that we are not obeying in advance to the wishes of this administration, as they very clearly move in the direction of full autarky, full authoritarian control over every aspect of the American government.
State's Attorney General pushing back against the president.
As the president, you must have an actual facts based on reality, not social media or just your gut feeling if you want to mobilize the military.
Now, to be clear, the judge's ruling simply bans the president from sending the National Guard here to Portland. Portland's police chief has also pushed back against the National Guard here. He fears that it would just escalate crowd behavior. Of course, the Trump administration has appealed.
That's the other thing. It's very obvious. The decision for Portland is significant because Portland is one of those places where they will push back. And I think Trump knows that. And that's the reason why, while most of the discontent has been fairly civil, they are trying to make a big deal out of it in an effort to lean into the Portland is on fire narratives. They want a confrontation. They want escalation. They want a confrontation worthy of some semblance of escalation that then turns into a much larger confrontation, and then they can justify the troop deployment to a larger percentage of the population. Now, Portland also is unique in the sense that it has drawn the ire of conservatives for many, many years at this point. For like the last decade, Portland has been considered this like Antifa safe haven, a complete like autonomous zone for radical anarchists and things of that nature. Portland is basically like the Jimmy Kimmel, if Jimmy Kimmel was like an anarchist. Portland has been the anarchist Jimmy Kimmel placeholder for a lot of conservatives. So there is more appetite for military intervention in Portland in the eyes of like many Republicans. And I have noticed that he's not doing this kind of stuff in red states, because I think he also recognizes that if he were to pull this same shit in red states, then the red states would start also experiencing discontent and showing up, and he would start withering away his base of support. So it's not just about like punishing the liberals in general. He will inevitably punish anyone who is a naysayer, but it's clear that he's trying to do this. It's clear that he's trying to do this in like these liberal safe havens. And it's so crazy because this kind of political polarization coming from the top office, when you're supposed to be the president of all Americans and not just like a increasingly shrinking number of Americans with unlimited appetite for death and destruction, that see you as a cult leader, that see you as this heaven's mandate receiving monarchic style figure. That's not how things are supposed to operate in this country. So as long as he keeps doing this stuff while not improving people's material circumstances, I think more and more people are going to get frustrated and be like, all right, enough with this tomfoolery. Fix the goddamn prices, big dog. And this has been my argument. This has been my argument from the jump. As I was saying, the Trump administration is not solving people's material realities, their actual problems, and doing all this fuck shit instead, doing all this destabilizing stuff instead, which means that there is still an audience for that, obviously, but that audience is increasingly shrinking. And the more people exhibit discontent, the more people get mad, the harder it will be for Trump to hold on to its governing coalition. And I don't mean like electorally. I mean just like instability is hard to keep up with. When you're the president, even if you are trying to make the country more fascist, for example, you still have these obligations. You have to make sure that you have your brown shirts, for example, because we don't have a ideologically grounded fascist movement in this country. So you still need something to whip the base. And if all you're doing is throwing red meat to an increasingly smaller audience while not actually fixing these overwhelming problems that people are feeling, problems that pertain to the cost of living crisis, problems that pertain to healthcare, problems that pertain to shelter and how expensive it is, people slowly but surely are going to start recognizing that maybe the administration doesn't have their best interest in mind.
Yeah, it's a political loser, John. It's a political loser. Donald Trump may think it's a political winner, but it's a political loser. Oppose Trump deploying in the U.S. city, active duty U.S. military, 61%. The National Guard in particular, 58%. When you get 3 in 5 Americans agreeing on anything, you know if that is on the opposition side, it's a political loser. And among independents, who are, of course, that key block in the middle of the United States political electorate, we're talking about 2/3 of independents there and about, who oppose the deployment of either active duty U.S. military or National Guard into U.S. cities.
What are the questions that people are asking, or what are the issues they see with these deployments?
Okay, look, I think it's that they don't buy Donald Trump's case for why these troops must go into the U.S. cities. So the New York Times essentially gave you a two-pronged little answer here, right? Trump may use the National Guard to intimidate rivals, or big city crime will spiral out of control if the troops don't go into cities.
Now put a audio compressor in your mic chain in OBS. What does that even mean? 2025 is the year of stream F's, gray boxes, auto adjusting mics. It is what it is, dude. It is what it is. Okay. We were doing Harry Emden. Harry Emden. Okay. God damn it. I'm going to cover this before I go on this panel. Even if it kills me.
Loser. Donald Trump may think it's a political winner, but it's a political loser. Opposed Trump deploying in the U.S. city, active duty U.S. military, 61%. The National Guard in particular, 58%. When you get 3 in 5 Americans agreeing on anything, you know if that is on the opposition side, it's a political loser. And among independents, who are, of course, that key block in the middle of the United States political electorate, we're talking about 2/3 of independents there and about who oppose the deployment of either active duty U.S. military or National Guard into U.S. cities.
What are the questions that people are asking, or what are the issues they see with these deployments?
Okay, look, I think it's that they don't buy Donald Trump's case for why these troops must go into the U.S. cities. So the New York.
I think those numbers are still, the numbers on the support side are still unimaginably high. And obviously, in a competent, normal, democratic process, like these numbers are incredible, and it should cause any administration to very quickly turn around and not do this, right? But we don't live in a normal government. We live in an abnormal government, and we live in abnormal times. And the very fact that there are still Republicans who are like, hell yeah, no, please kill some, they, thems in Portland, and it'll make me feel better, is insane to me. So about 39% are just like invested in shooting at anarchist English majors and stuff? Like, is that what's going on? Is that where we're at? That's what I'm supposed to believe? Yeah. Adam Johnson says, engaging with public opinion is useful, but I think it's important to understand that Trump and his close band of ideological confederates do not care about the public opinion. They believe that once they're done, it'll have little bearing on who's in the White House January 21st, 2029. Now, having said that, I don't fully agree with this. The reason why I don't fully agree with this is because while it's correct that the Trump administration doesn't care about public opinion all that much, the goal here for the population in general and for all of you is to get other people on board and make this as costly as possible, make this as difficult a process as possible. When you make this a difficult process, when you don't obey in advance, for example, you cause the administration to reconsider. You cause the administration to think, okay, maybe we can't get away with this. Okay? That's how it works. That's it. That's why discontent is important. That's why discontent is extremely important. That's why protests are extremely important, no matter what the cost.
Times essentially gave you a two-pronged little answer here, right? Trump may use the National Guard to intimidate rivals, or big city crime will spiral out of control if the troops don't go into cities. What you see here is the majority that takes the case is that Trump may use the National Guard to intimidate political rivals at 51%. Just 42% of Americans agree with the Donald Trump stance that, in fact, big city crime will spiral out of control if the National Guard doesn't go into U.S. cities. So essentially what we're seeing here is Donald Trump's making a case, the Democratic opposition's making another case, and the Democratic opposition's case is winning here, and that is a big reason why what you see is you get about 3 in 5 Americans saying they don't want troops going into U.S. cities.
I cannot believe that 42% of Americans think big city crime will spiral out of control without the National Guard, and the only reason why so many Americans so many Americans polled still to this day believe this insanity is a direct consequence of under the Brandon administration, the liberal media, all of the local news broadcasters, and also the national news broadcasters being completely dominated by reactionary framing on crime and punishment. The notion that these cities are actually on fire. Okay? This kind of made up fear mongering has been incredibly effective in brain breaking your elderly relatives. This is something that I have actively pushed back against when Brandon was in charge, okay? And I talked about the crime panic narratives and how damaging that would be eventually. And it has been. I mean, I have all my own relatives that have fallen victim to the crime panic narratives, assuming that Democrats actually don't care about crime at all, and that the only solution to crime is more aggressive apprehension initiatives, more aggressive detainment initiatives, which, of course, when pushed to its logical limit, imply the utilization of lethal force in the hands of the American military against domestic enemies. And that's where we're at. That is precisely where we're at. That we wouldn't have gotten to this point if even the liberal side, if the Democrat side on this argument wasn't also completely leaning into the crime panic narratives out of fears that this was far too good a message being presented by the Republicans.
You have another really interesting way at looking at this. That President Trump seems uniquely focused on Portland, on Memphis, on these cities and crime there. What do voters think he should be focused on?
Okay, so if you saw the opening slide on this.
Proof on Biden. I believe it. I just want to know. Proof on Biden. The media coverage. Go back and look at my analysis and my criticism of the media coverage under the Biden administration about crime panic narratives in blue cities specifically, mostly pushed by the right, but a lot of, like, if you look at San Francisco, for example, like a lot of the tech CEOs who before they actively before they openly became right wingers, right? They were also leaning into this idea that, like, George Soros backed woke prosecutors were actually letting criminals roam free in the streets of San Francisco and in major, like, Democrat run cities. One of the best examples of this is, like, gruesome Governor Gavin Newsom's rehabilitation initiatives that sought to address the overfilling crisis that the California prisons had, in an effort to address the major crisis of having California penitentiaries overflowing with people that didn't really need to be there. He tried to get 75,000 prisoners released earlier than they normally would after they had, and there were numerous provisions on this. Like, I think it was, you had to have served 2/3 of your sentence, and you would obviously still be seen by a parole board that would see if you have actually rehabilitated or not, all this stuff. And yet even liberals were very critical of Gavin Newsom and completely leaned into the bullshit framing, claiming that he was just, like, releasing rapist pedophiles without any due process whatsoever. It was such endless bad faith argumentation that liberals were completely incapable of pushing back on. Here, this is another fantastic example of this, but with respect to ICE. Okay, Brian Schatz is the United States Senator from Hawaii. Okay, he says, why do we need snipers in our cities? Now, he said this on October 4th. Why are 6 masked men slamming a guy in a wheelchair in the ground? Why would an agent tackle a scared wife? Add the rhetoric of the president is increasing manic and angry senior advisors, and we are at a fork in the road. Adam Johnson says, Brian, you supported doubling ICE's budget last year, backing what you described as a Republican border security bill. Given ICE's lawlessness, do you think in retrospect this was a wise idea? Now, to liberals, this probably comes across as an I told you so moment. Like, this is a cynical, radical leftist by the name of Adam Johnson who's just simply trying to dunk on a Democrat at a time when we need to be united. But this is a very important issue to address, because right now, we need to be on a defensive posture and we need to be united. We need to express solidarity with everyone, including liberals who are seeking to address some of the problems that this administration is engaging in. Having said that, however, it is important to make sure that liberals do address this dumb behavior. Liberals do address the fact that they also leaned into the crime panic narratives, leaned into the narratives about immigrants constituting a significant national security threat, because they are the ones who allowed this to happen. And the reason why we have to address this crisis and the Democrats in power setting up the stage, setting up the standard for Donald Trump to dunk on, okay, is because if in a positive turn, Democrats do come back into power, they cannot repeat these issues. They cannot repeat the same things that they've done that led to this crisis to begin with. The same goes for every single issue. Same goes for like the bullshit anti-Semitism is exploding in college campuses narratives that Democrats leaned into leading up to the election cycle, because they also personally wanted to punish the naysayers. They also wanted to punish the campus protesters because they wanted to continue their allegiance with Israel as Israel was committing a genocide, right? It's completely ridiculous. And we have to do our very best to explain to people, like, if we don't reverse the trajectory, if Democrats actually hold any sort of office, we're cooked again. Next time, there is another competent Republican, a more competent Republican that comes in charge and takes over the government, and maybe a Tucker Carlson. Do you think this is a good use of your platform right now? Brian Schatz says, do you think meaningfully combating the forces of fascism require coherent and consistent counter politics and not nonstop triangulation and stupid gotchas that reinforce every racist MAGA premise? I think it does. And I think it will continue to do so moving forward. The border was a mess. Things are way worse now. And a part of what I was doing was to prevent us from landing there. Yes, the White House's cutesy triangulation gotcha paid zero political dividends, raised the salience of the issue in Republicans' favor, and now Dems have no coherent counterargument because they embraced all of the Republican central premises. Perhaps moving forward, this could be avoided. This is exactly what I was crying about over and over again in the lead up to the election, when Biden, before October 7, on October 6, as a matter of fact, unveiled his right-wing border bill, if you remember. And the reason why they did that was because they were responding to how far-right people had become on the issue of the border, on the issue of immigration. And the only reason why the broader public was more right-wing than ever before in the history of the United States of America on the issue of immigration, in a nation that is comprised entirely of migrants, was because the Republicans had dominated the narrative, with no counter messaging and no pushback whatsoever from the supposed left flank party. They didn't do that. They didn't actually take the initiative. They didn't actually follow through on their initial campaign promises. Biden made a significant amount of promises for his first 100 days of immigration, starting off the process of mass amnesty, right? They didn't do that. They didn't do any of that stuff. And there were people who were, why are you calling Dems left? No, I'm saying the Democratic Party is supposed to represent the left flank of American politics. I'm not saying that they are a leftist party or an anti-capitalist party at all. I'm saying that they are to the left of whatever the Republican Party represents. Okay, if you look at the Overton window, of course, if you look at like the Democratic Party's politics broadly, from some kind of like international standard, yes, of course, they are a center-right party, and the Republicans are a far-right party. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't leftist figures within this center-right party coalition. There are, right? The Democratic Party is currently ranging all the way from Zohran Mamdani to AOC down to the center-right figures and or the center-right expressions of politics that you see, such as leaning into the panicked, hysterical narratives that the Republicans have cultivated, such as immigrants constituting a national security threat. But they are a representative force of left flank of American politics. Yeah, they go all the way from Zohran Mamdani down to John Fetterman. Okay?
Segment, right? It was, has Trump taken his eye off the ball? The American people believe, yes, John Berman, Donald Trump has taken his eye off the ball. There is too much focus on putting troops into U.S. cities. 52%, the majority of Americans agree that the Trump admin is focusing too much on that. Where do they want him to go? They want him to focus on lowering prices. 75% say there's too little focus on lowering prices. This is the reason that Donald Trump was put into office, was to lower prices. And at this particular point, 3 in 4 Americans say there is too little focus. Donald Trump is focusing on the wrong things, and they don't like the way he's going about it. And this, my friends, will tell the entire story if it holds a year from now, going into the midterm elections. If the Republicans lose control of the House, dare lose control of the Senate, it will be because they believe that Donald Trump has lost focus. He is not keeping his eye on the ball, and I
told you guys over and over again that this would happen eventually, okay? I didn't even think that it would happen this fast, but then again, I also did not think that Donald Trump would be this much of a force. I didn't think he would be this swift in ruining everything and breaking everything, okay? I thought it would have taken a little bit more time. So, yeah, my panel is supposed to be at 3, but it seems as though it's being pushed back, at least because like it being pushed. Because I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at the panel on the side, and they're still going. They're still talking. The panel from before mine is still talking. Yeah, Donald Trump has been speed running his first year in office, and very clearly, this has been frustrating for a lot of people. And it's been so frustrating that even in the absence of good leadership from the Democratic Party, people have actually mobilized on their own. Okay. This is a rare moment where I don't fully agree with Adam Johnson as far as like the Trump administration. I do agree with him when he says like the Trump administration doesn't care about popular opinion. But in general, every administration has to manage whatever kind of direction that they're taking. Okay. And even if the Donald Trump administration is very actively trying to undermine what remains of like constitutional protections in this country, okay, ultimately, if there is too much public discontent, too much public pressure, they're going to have a much harder time. Okay, I think my panel is up now because I see the people leaving. Yeah, Oscar Nunez, actor and comedian. Okay, yeah, this is the panel. Anyway, let's get back to it. Let's lock in. Judge temporarily blocks Trump admin from sending National Guard to Portland.
Blocked the president once again from sending troops to Portland, Oregon. Protests have grown there since he announced the plan, but they are confined to just one city block. Troops are being sent to Chicago, where there is growing outrage over immigration raids that have temporarily swept up U.S. citizens. Usher Qureshi's in Broadview, that's a Chicago suburb, with the latest. Usher, good to see you. What can you tell us?
Good morning. Well, after days of federal immigration raids and counter protests in Chicago, the Trump administration over the weekend said it would deploy 300 Illinois National Guard troops here over objections from the state's Democratic governor. Protests against immigration and customs enforcement turned ugly in and around Chicago over the weekend, as people faced off with law enforcement and tension at times boiled over into physical altercations following days of ICE raids and counter demonstrations.
Acts of violence are occurring on a regular basis.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem on Sunday called Chicago a war zone. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, a Democrat, said federal agents were to blame.
They want mayhem on the ground. They want to create the war zone so that they can send in even more troops.
When asked about his plan to deploy hundreds of Illinois National Guard troops in the Windy City, President Trump cited violent crime.
People shot and killed, and Pritzker gets up and says what a wonderful place it is. They need help.
City data shows at least 270 people have died in Chicago shooting incidents since January, but that's down substantially from this time last year. Anti-ICE protesters also hit the streets in Portland, Oregon over the weekend.
That's right. Good job, boys.
Where they faced off last night with federal officers in front of the ICE headquarters in Portland after a Trump-appointed federal judge temporarily.
Yeah, I mean, this is from before. This is from October 6th. Yeah, that's something that he's entertained quite a bit. So
barred the president from deploying any National Guard troops. At least one protester was arrested, and our affiliate KOIN says
that's today. Oh, October. I thought it was September 6th. Wait, that's from today? Oh, yeah, that is today. Oh, my God. My brain is so doo-doo.
So far, it hasn't been necessary, but we have an Insurrection Act for a reason. If I had to enact it, I'd do that. If people were being killed and courts were holding us up, or governors or mayors were holding us up, sure, I'd do that. But if it was necessary.
Still on French time, jet lag, brother. Dog, this is worse than jet lag. This is worse than jet lag because I'm not only am I on French time, but I also don't have any sleep whatsoever. I've been go for the past week, non-fucking stop, every single day, sleeping for like 3 hours max, and not getting good enough sleep at all. So I have jet lag and sleep debt. Stop getting COVID so much, dude. What? COVID. The fuck are you talking about? That's what happens when going to parties in France. Yeah, real party. I partied so hardy. It's funny that you're saying that, especially because I was live at the time when parties would be happening.
So far, it hasn't been necessary, but we have an insurrection act for a reason. If I had to enact it, I'd.
Yeah.
Bullets and smoke were used. The same judge had already ruled against activating Oregon-based Guard members in Portland a day earlier. However, in what appeared to be an attempt to circumvent that decision, the Trump administration Sunday reassigned roughly 200 California National Guard troops to Portland. And Texas's Republican governor confirmed he'd authorized the federal use of 200 troops in several cities, including Portland.
Portland is burning to the ground. You have agitated.
It's so crazy, bro. It's just, what are we doing? Whenever I hear the president just routinely lie like this, in a way that's so transparently untrue, because he's not even like trying to massage the narrative. He's just actively coming out and being like, nah, the sky is actually not blue. It's a different color. It's a different color you've never seen before. It's green. Everybody knows the sky is green. It's not blue. You don't need oxygen for survival. Everyone knows you don't need to breathe. You can just see, I'm doing it right now. It's just, he can just sit there and be like, they're burning down Portland. Portland is on fire. And because so many people are never going to go to Portland, and so many people are already operating under the assumption that Portland is on fire, they just look to this dumbass and go, yeah, he's right. He's so right. Portland is on fire. Please, Mr. President, kill those people that are lighting Portland on fire.
Insurrectionists.
Now, we should mention that our producer in Portland told us that.
Also, COVID is surging right now and still killing the disabling people out there, dude. Wait, what the f- does that have to do with? Okay. Then why are you being a dickhead about it? Don't act like you were making an important point about, being more careful about COVID. You just said stop getting COVID so much. If it's serious, then you're betraying the seriousness of the crisis that you're trying to communicate.
Before those clashes at the ICE facility, the city was calm and those protests have been contained to a single block. The city even hosted its annual marathon yesterday. As for Illinois, the governor says his state is among the places Texas troops are now expected to deploy. Nate?
Usher, thank you.
Meanwhile, in Chicago, sources telling Fox News police there were told to actually stand down on helping ICE agents who are in danger. Mike Tobin.
How dare they? How dare they? Look at this narrative, by the way. They're presenting this as though like Portland is so captured by socialist anarchist radicals that even the administrators in Portland are trying to stop ICE from operating. Or sorry, Chicago as well. Same thing. It's the same. It's the same principle. Sorry, it's the same. And in both of these places, obviously, the truth is that local law enforcement is actually, to a certain degree, helping ICE. They're not directly communicating with one another, but they certainly are helping with not the apprehensions, but personally brutalizing the protesters themselves. No, it's not Chirac, it's not Lib Portland's. No, it doesn't matter. Both of these places are getting the same reception. People are mad, people are angry, and Trump wants to send the troops to both of these places. I think there's a viral surge of streamers being mean to be specifically. Be careful. Okay, well, you're testing it.
Has the story for us, all the details. Hi, Mike.
And Dana, we've got a lot of rank and file Chicago police officers behind the scenes telling us that they are outraged that the stand down order went out to them after federal agents were attacked. The order appears to have come through a communication from the chief of patrol over the communication through the Office of Emergency Management.
I love this guy's neck.
and communication reading. No units will respond to this. Multiple police sources have confirmed to us the message is authentic, and it is backed up by audio of the stand down order.
They brought the most thumb-like guy they possibly could so that he doesn't get hit in the crossfire, you know? Because, like, cops will take one look at that man and go, oh, you're one of us, right? You are the most thumb-like individual we could find at Fox News.
And again, per the chief of patrol, we have all the units that per 999, chief of patrol said all units clear out from there. We're not sending anybody over to that location. All right, and 999, just to confirm, 39th Police in Kedzie, they were saying that they were being surrounded by that large crowd, and they were requesting the police were not sending. I'm waving off all the cars heading to 39th Police in Kedzie.
Again, those are the orders we're being given.
In an official statement, CPD says officers did respond. Writing, quote, CPD responded to the scene to document the incident. CPD officers were also on the scene to maintain safety and traffic control. Now, chaos was triggered when, according to federal prosecutors, two individuals used their cars to ram the cars of Border Patrol agents. One of the agents shot a driver of one attacking vehicle. Those attackers are now charged federally. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker says the facts need to play out.
We don't have a lot of facts. Remember, these are the same folks who killed a person, unarmed person, just a couple of weeks ago in Franklin Park. At first, they said that the officer had been threatened with his life. The reality of it and the truth of it has now come out, and that wasn't the case. They killed somebody. They are just putting out their propaganda, and then we've got to later determine what actually happened.
I like that federal law enforcement operates exactly the same way that local law enforcement does, but because the federal law enforcement is acting against the interests of like the state officials, they have to recognize that cops lie. But of course, only the federal ones, right? Only the federal ones. You know, like no disrespect to the big boy here, but like, yeah, they're cops. They're doing what cops do. They're doing exactly what, I mean, especially Chicago Police Department, which is like notorious for its cruelty. They're doing that. Do they have body cams? ICE does not. Local law enforcement does. Not that it has been a significant limiter of their brutality. They find ways around that all the time. Plus, there's not really a major accountability structure anyway, with the exception of like public pushback and protests. But yes, ICE is even less restrained than the minimal restraints that exist for local law enforcement after years and years of Black Lives Matter protests. ICE do have cams as to how these two people were allowed to go free. This one's in Chicago, had them anyway. No, they don't always have it. What is this? Oh my God. That's such a funny look. Most major metropolises have a civilian complaint review board, which of course is limited in effectiveness. There's no equivalent for federal law enforcement. Yeah, Big Brother's always watching, baby.
300 Illinois National Guardsmen have now been called up for a 2-month deployment to Chicago. What you're looking at right now is video of the scene that triggered that particular radio call. Tear gas and pepper balls were deployed into the crowd after agents said they were attacked. But meantime, as I just mentioned, 300 Illinois National Guardsmen have been called up for a 2-month deployment to Chicago to protect federal personnel and property. Also, Texas National Guardsmen, 400 of them, have been called up for deployment to both Illinois, to Portland, and an undetermined location. Back to you, Dana.
All right, Mike, thank you.
Hey, it's Will Kane. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube.
This escalates.
J.B. Pritzker says Trump is sending in troop as a pretext for the troops to Illinois, as a pretext for the Insurrection Act, is true. It is interesting that this admin, in all of its cruelty and in all of its incompetence, is forcing at least like some of the more competent administrators to finally push back with, I mean, there's significant limits here to what they can do, but they're trying to do it nonetheless. I don't know how much you can trust local law enforcement or state law enforcement, but like Is that what it's going to get down to? You got the National Guard duking it out with like state troopers and shit? Because where does this go? And I don't even know if the state troopers or state and local law enforcement would actually do that, would actually entertain pushing back against the National Guard anyway. What I do know, however, is that it's not going anywhere good. It doesn't look like it's going anywhere good anytime soon. However, there has been a funny instance of cops receiving, local law enforcement receiving a fraction of the pain that they push on the regular population. There's a video out there of, I think, ICE tear gassing local cops or something. Is this it? Is this the one? Chicago police officer was seen with watery eyes, coughing and struggling to breathe after what could have been tear gas or smoke was released this afternoon at 39 in Kedzie, where a protest against ICE was taking place.
They just tear gas you. They don't give a fuck about you either. Why you protecting them? Come on, man. Tomorrow it's you.
That's so funny. It's just, you know, that's some hog on hog violence right there, baby. These guys are usually the first to deploy the tear gas, so I'm surprised. I'm surprised to watch this in action, you know? They don't give a about you either. Yeah, it's true.
Come on, man. Y'all, you know that was up. Y'all know that was up. Y'all know that was up. Garcia! Trail! Wake up! Wake up! You're gonna wake up! We're gonna go this way and then we'll see. Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! Y'all don't get, none of us get paid enough for this. Hey, it's time to get up. Get up
and
now.
arrest ICE.
Wake up!
They shot a Chicagoan
Wake
today.
up.
Arrest ICE.
Wake up! Wake up!
That'd be pretty sick if they started arresting ICE. Have you seen the crusty gnome crying about ICE not being able to piss? Hilarious. Yes, I covered it the other day. Now imagine if Antifa did this. I mean, they'd kill him. Chicagoans standing up and running ICE out. Oh, I saw this one as well. This video is great. Here it is. Southside Chicago, Windy City residents run off immigration agents to save a man mid-abduction on 63rd and Costner Avenue.
La migra!
Legally, Chicago Police Department can arrest federal agents if they're breaking the law. I mean, but they are. They are. They're doing it all the time. This is one of the interesting parts of like, this is one of the things that I've talked about with respect to what like ICE is doing. Okay. A lot of what they're doing is on shaky legal grounds, right? Like, of course, they are abiding by the wishes of the federal government, but the warrantless apprehensions and the fact that like they're engaging in the what the ACLU calls is operations in constitution-free zones, 100 miles from airports, all international airports, and 100 miles from every border that the United States has, which of course means a population of 70% of Americans, like an area of operation. Technically, what they're doing in many of these instances, like regular detainment for after racial profiling, like all of that is illegal. And they know it's on shaky legal ground. And that's precisely the reason why they're doing it while they're masked. Okay? They lie about being cops. They're not cops. Okay? ICE is not, they're not police. Like, it doesn't matter if they're wearing a vest that says police and then underneath it says ICE. Like, they're not. They're ICE. They're Customs and Border Patrol. And it is actually an illegal detention when they apprehend an American citizen. It's in this weird legal gray area. Obviously, it's morally morally repulsive, but it's a legal gray area, which is precisely why like DRS of this sort until they decide to further prosecute this, are sometimes successful. Like the difference between, I said this with like Mohsen Mahdawi, right? The difference between the Korean American or the Korean student in Colombia and Mahmoud Khalil or Mohsen Mahdawi was the fact that they actually apprehended those two, whereas they couldn't apprehend the other person because they just couldn't find her, right? They tried to, but I believe she wasn't at her apartment, so they just could not find her. And then a judge protected her. A judge said, yeah, you don't have any right to do this. And she got away. She got away scot-free because the administration was doing something that was up and illegal. So in this circumstance, like these kinds of incidents, or any kind of like additional hurdle, what they consider to be obstruction of justice, or an impediment to like police activity or whatever they choose to call it, can actually literally allow people to not fall victim to an unjust process. Oh, nice. Breaking news. Burbank Airport will have no air traffic controllers this evening. FAA warns. Thanks, real Donald Trump. Burbank Airport has 0 air traffic controllers from 4:15 to 10 p.m. today because of your government shutdown. Awesome, dude. That's awesome. I love that.
Hey! No!
Asshole. Look at this asshole. What do you recommend people do when you see ICE apprehending someone? Look, be safe. I'm not, it's a choose your own destiny type adventure. Definitely record though. Definitely film them. That I can say.
Let him go! Let him go! Let him go!
Like, look at this. Look at how crazy this is. This masked has no indication. You have no way to know if this person is just a kidnapper or actually working for the federal law enforcement agencies. No identification whatsoever. Just a bunch of incompetent racists living out their racist fantasies. He is ha ha ha.
Get off him!
Yeah. You won't be laughing when you see this kind of vigilante action, seemingly vigilante action, when it happens to you or a loved one, for the record. That's crazy. They're just straight up putting their bodies in between.
Let him go.
Causing them in real time to make the decision, is it worth it? Like, is it worth it? And then I guess they just give up. By the way, again, unmarked vehicle, plainclothes cop, potentially. We don't know. But they in real time go, okay, is it worth it? Is it worth it to continue with this apprehension and detainment? Now, the worst aspect of this kind of like cruelty for the sake of cruelty methods that you're seeing from ICE is that, like, there are going to be instances where they might be actually, in one of the rare instances, they might be actually trying to apprehend like a pedophile. You know what I mean? But this is what happens when the overwhelming majority of people that you're kidnapping without going through the proper process, okay, is that people end up losing confidence in federal law enforcement, especially for ICE in general. It makes total sense for them to not have any confidence. That is precisely the reason why they have to make sure that they're following the letter of the law every step of the way. This is in some ways, this is no different than like having Kash Patel be the director of the FBI and come out without a proper investigation with information that later is proven to be untrue. You can't do that. Every time you do that, you cause people to lose confidence. And a big part of law enforcement is authority. A big part of being able to conduct law enforcement action is by instilling a sense of confidence in these institutions, and therefore have the authority to be able to command people. When people lose confidence, when the public broadly loses confidence in a law enforcement agency, these kinds of things will inevitably happen. That's what happens. That's what happens when, like, you know, the overwhelming majority of people that you are apprehending are not actually doing any sort of serious crimes whatsoever. Stuff like this will become common. I stood my ground, but it was the police raiding my house. This is from December 8th, 2023. Diamonds Ford thought she was shooting at an intruder when Florida cops raided her home without knocking. Then she was charged with attempted murder. Like, there's a reason why law enforcement can't behave as a bunch of jackbooted thugs of the state. Yeah, her charges were dropped, by the way, chatters. What a lot of cops don't realize is they're putting themselves in harm's way when they let this kind of shit fly. They think they are unstoppable. They think that they will remain unaccountable, not realizing that this kind of unaccountable, unstoppable violence that happens all over the country is not only going to frustrate people for understandable reasons, but it's actually going to cause them to lose complete confidence in these institutions that are supposed to be instruments of justice. And eventually that leads to complete chaos, complete anarchy. This kind of shit doesn't happen in countries where people have the utmost confidence in law enforcement, where they believe that, like, well, you know, there's some standards. It's not going to be a bunch of like random racist dickheads running around with masks apprehending people because they think that the dude has too much melanin. You know, if that's the overall attitude, then of course people are going to try and do de-arrests, which is a concept that is otherwise unheard of. But because the arrests themselves are being done to people broadly that have not done any sort of significant crimes, the assumption from most Americans is, here it is, yet another person that's being falsely kidnapped. Here's J.B. Pritzker saying Trump is sending troops as a pretext for the Insurrection Act.
The of violence is targeted and intentional and premeditated. The Trump administration is following a playbook: cause chaos, create fear and confusion, make it seem like peaceful protesters are a mob by firing gas pellets and tear gas canisters at them. Why? To create the pretext for invoking the Insurrection Act so that he can send...
I mean, I will say this is funny for like any position of authority to say, because like that's precisely how local law enforcement also operates. I just, you know, he's on the right side of this issue, but like that is literally what cops do. It's just like funny to see a governor talk about law enforcement in this way, you know, like he's a Hasan head or something, because like that is precisely what local cops do as well.
Military troops to our city. He wants to justify and normalize the presence of armed soldiers under his direct command.
Illinois and the city of Chicago are filing a lawsuit against the Trump administration over deployments of National Guard troops. Joining us now to comment, White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, Stephen Miller. My question was whether the administration still plans to abide by that judge's order restricting any National Guard troops from being sent to Oregon.
Well, the administration will abide by the ruling insofar as it affects the covered parties. But there are also many other options the president has to deploy federal resources and assets under the U.S. military to Portland. But I was making the point that under federal law, Section Title 10 of the U.S. Code, the president has the authority anytime he believes federal resources are insufficient to federalize the National Guard to carry out a mission necessary for public safety. So it's important to understand that in Portland, ICE officers have been subjected to over 100 nights of terrorist assault, doxing, murder threats.
I do think that this is going to lose its usefulness in the same way that like anti-Semitism lost its usefulness, right? Because it was deployed so unevenly and with such great frequency. Whenever someone was like, hey man, I think what Israel's doing is like pretty up, they'd be like, you anti-Semite. Yeah, after maybe the first 10 times, people started going, what do you mean? You say that all the time. You say that to everything. And it's like, if you're going to apply terrorism and doxing charges to, for example, a person demanding that an ICE agent reveal their identity, like where an apprehension, another kidnapping is happening, and someone, a civilian that is a witness to this incident goes, hey, what's your badge number? And you go, wow, that's doxing. That's a prosecutable act. You keep doing that, people are going to go, you say that about everything, big dog. You mean this is doxing and this is a violent act? No, it's called demanding proper identification from a public servant that is unaccountable, that has tremendous amounts of power over regular citizens.
Violent attack and every other means imaginable to try to overturn the results of the last election through violence. The most important point I want to make today is that the number 1 and 2 items in the GOP platform in 2024 were to turn back the border invasion and carry out the largest deportation program in American history. Since Inauguration Day, there's been an orchestrated campaign of terrorism and violence against ICE officers. Of course, we saw the recent sniper attack against ICE officers. They're publishing their families' photos online. They're threatening them with murder, they're threatening them with death, and they're physically attacking them in the street each and every day. And yet, shamefully, the mayor and governor in Portland and Oregon have refused to render aid, leaving ICE officers to street fight every single night against these terrorists.
You make the claim of terrorist assaults and violence attack over 100 nights, and yet the judge overseeing this case says that that's untethered from reality. And local officials on the ground say that Trump's assertion of what's happening is in Portland, that it's war-ravaged and burning to the ground, is far from true. I looked at the police data, and police have made something like 70 total arrests since June, and there are no reports of buildings being burned to the ground. The White House cited a guillotine being rolled out as like a public display of rebellion, but there isn't actually a threat that these demonstrators are going to overthrow the government. Are you concerned that that response weakens your legal argument?
No, they are actually, as we speak, trying to overthrow the core law enforcement function of the federal government. Boris, this is, I think, where we're talking past each other. When ICE officers have to street battle against Antifa, hand-to-hand combat every night to come and go from their building, when they try to exit in a vehicle, when they are swarmed and surrounded and they try to tip the vehicle over, when people bring weapons to an ICE facility to try to engage in direct violent assault against ICE officers, what is the purpose? It is to prevent Immigration and Customs Enforcement from carrying out the mission the American people elected them to do.
You make the case that these are terrorists, but in what we've seen thus far, the actual incidents of people inciting violence and not responding to law enforcement attempting to disperse them are not an open rebellion. I mean, again, you make this characterization as though they're terrorists, and I do wonder if it is.
That's awesome. That's awesome that even the CNN host, I mean, he's one of the better ones for sure, but even he's just like, dude, you call everybody a terrorist. I don't think this is terrorism at all. Are people now the equivalent of Antifa, like Palestinians or Hamas? Yes. There is a severe crisis in the Israelification of American society. It's almost like it's looping back around. Israel was very America coded, and now we are becoming more Israel coded. Because, I mean, Israel is accelerated in its fascist endeavor. It's more advanced in its fascism than America is as it stands currently.
Potentially a problem in the future for Republicans. If a Democratic president someday calls the National Guard to a red state over what they see as open rebellion, but is what amounts to a demonstration that gets rowdy. I mean, is that not a fear
they're
of
posting
yours?
pictures of their kids because it's a demonstration, and they have a sniper on top of a building firing a high-caliber rifle at a nice facility because it's a demonstration. And
yeah, listen, little bro, there's a difference between those things, okay, and what the average person is doing. No matter how hard you try to lump it all together, it's not working.
they are engaged in vehicle ramming
But the
attacks,
National Guard isn't
coordinated
being
ramming
sent to
attacks
Texas.
because it's a
The National Guard
demonstration.
isn't being sent to Dallas, where that sniper was.
Because the Dallas Police Department and the governor of Texas, well, you walked right into that one, have responded.
Oh, wow, you have activated my trap card. He also comes across as such a whiny loser.
To every call for assistance and help. They gave a stand-down order in Chicago, and they gave a stand-down order in Portland. Do you realize that there's 11,000 federal law enforcement officers in Oregon? That's larger than the size of the FBI. Local and state police are resourced to deal with this kind of riotous assembly, but they have refused. They've been given a stand-down order. So
they've
we
arrested
need
some
to use
70
National
people
Guard and
since
federal
June.
troops
They've been
to fill
arresting
in
folks
that
on the
breach.
ground. They've been arresting folks on the ground. They refute
haven't
what you're
touched-
saying outright.
We literally have the 911 audio of this stand-down order in Chicago, and we have documented inside of DHS every single unresponded to 911 call over the recent weeks and months.
Do you have...
Damn, local police incompetence is harming ICE. That's awesome. Also, I heard some other stuff about this. Apparently, ICE was making like fake calls as well, like making calls that were ridiculous to 911 themselves.
Evidence that this campaign is coordinated. Are you planning charges on anyone who is actually coordinating said campaign?
Yes. So since the Joint Terrorism Task Force has gotten involved.
Yeah, here, this is why it's so funny. ICE has been making phony calls to 911 and filling false police reports in Chicago in a deliberate scheme to antagonize local law enforcement. Any of us would get arrested for this.
You are watching as Broadview police respond to a 911 call, claiming someone was tampering with a gate at the ICE detention facility there. Body camera footage obtained by the CBS News Chicago investigators shows...
They're so bad, dude. That's illegal. That's literally illegal. That is, I guess, add that on to numerous other illegal things that ICE is doing. That is awesome. Awesome.
Several Broadview police officers respond to an alleged Homeland Security threat. The gate in question is where ICE takes detained immigrants for processing.
What's up, guys?
Hey, what's up?
Not much.
How are you?
Good. We got a call of subjects trying to climb over the fence or something.
No,
not since we've been here.
But when police arrive, all they find is two people and a camera. Our CBS photographer filming the exterior of the building with a CBS security guard by his side.
Okay, and you guys didn't tamper with any of the...
No, man. The 911 call claiming someone was tampering with the gate came from an ICE agent. According to this incident report, an ICE agent called police for help.
But he can't go and try to force his way in that.
Yeah, I guess they're just doing the same. They're doing the same shit that they've always done. We're just like, excuse me, there's a nuisance. 911, I'm annoyed and scared. Come here right now, please.
Okay, so the guy in the booth.
Just says that he was just recording.
Do you believe that that was a false call?
I do. Again, it was just our CBS photographer filming the exterior of the building.
In your mind, bogus.
Yes. It's disturbing. It's ridiculous.
That's
Broadview
awesome.
Police Chief Thomas Mills says this is just one of several questionable 911 calls his police department has received from ICE at this facility recently. This same detention center has become the site of at least 3 other incidents involving federal agents who are accused of hitting people with cars, shooting projectiles, and using chemical agents on journalists, including a CBS reporter last Sunday.
Yeah, dude. Amazing. It's funny that they've antagonized 2 groups that under normal circumstances would absolutely be on board. Okay? Local law enforcement and local news. These guys are, in most circumstances, totally on board with like police brutality and things of that nature. They will do decent coverage every now and then, but the ICE is so annoying and such a disruptive force that they have lost local news and local law enforcement in the process. Amazing. That is amazing. I never thought I would see the day. Anyway, that obviously hasn't stopped Stephen Miller from crying about local law enforcement not following every little fake call that ICE is making.
We found that there are common funding, that there is common financing, that there are meeting points, that is
what you're
carefully
describing as
orchestrated,
actual
it is carefully
terrorism.
integrated. Yes.
And you are going to charge...
They're making posts on Instagram that hurt the feelings of our fat agents. They're calling them fat. Okay. This is fat shaming. They're demonstrating fat phobia. They're not abiding by standpoint theory. ICE is a protected group. It's very disappointing. And I keep calling the cops every time. I keep calling them. I say, 911. They say, 911, what's your emergency? I say, they're doing body fascism. They're doing body fascism. They're calling my big, beautiful agents fat. Can you please arrest them? And then the cops hang up. I hate that. I hate that. Why are the cops hanging up? You're supposed to stop every nuisance. What are these guys getting paid for?
Someone with terrorism.
Well, so I would like to.
I bet you would like to, but
I would like to. He said, I bet you would like to. Oh, that's awesome. Yes. Why can't I call them terrorists? Why can't I? I think they're terrorizing me. They keep saying my wife is Elon Musk. That is terrorizing. That's a terroristic threat. Okay. And if my wife were to Elon Musk in a hypothetical scenario, I would be in the room sitting on the cuck chair. Okay. And if that's my kink, you should stop kink shaming me. That's terrorism.
Doesn't mean you're going to, are you?
No. What I'm saying to you is the Congress has statutes on seditious conspiracy, on insurrection, on impeding federal law enforcement. The domestic terrorism statute in Congress obviously needs to be strengthened. For domestic terrorism in Congress, we have foreign terrorism charges. We have an entire patchwork of federal law.
Like that, what he's saying right there is so terrifying because the First Amendment has made it so that we do not have the same vague standard of terrorism applied at the domestic level. Now, there are issues with that for sure, especially when you have like when you have the Klan wreaking havoc and there's been no active way to disassemble militia movements such as that one. But of course, this administration is trying to change that in the opposite direction, not going after like active groups that are causing a significant amount of harm, okay? But instead, they're going after decentralized movements of people expressing discontent towards this administration, basically making the Klan the federal law enforcement apparatus. Incredible stuff. But once again, the First Amendment actually stops this kind of domestic terrorism designation from actually happening because it is seen as any sort of formation that is anti-capitalist or anti-fascist, even if it was a organized unit. That in and of itself is First Amendment protected. Individuals that engage in criminal behavior beyond that can be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. But you can't just like actively decide that anti-fascism is actually a terrorist organization and whoever we call anti-fascists, we have now declared a member of a terrorist organization and go after them.
To the extent that there are charges that apply, we will charge them in every single case. You have impeding law enforcement, you have seditious conspiracy, you have a conspiracy to deprive of rights, you have assault against law enforcement officers. But all of this meets the hallmark, textbook definitions of domestic terrorism. Boris, I just want you, just for a moment, to step back and think about what we're talking about here.
Oh my God, this is so Israel. Not much amazes me anymore about the modern GOP, but Back the Blue went out the window stunningly fast after the feds built their own goon squads accountable only to them. Those cops aren't cops, they're Antifa with badges. Look at them. Yeah, cops are Hamas. Benjamin Netanyahu is Hamas. The IDF is Hamas. It's the same. That is the same energy. It's the exact same energy. So stupid.
President Trump ran and won a campaign on turning back the border invasion.
You've said
you
that
have the mayor
several
of
times,
Chicago.
Stephen. We have a limited amount of time, so let me ask you. Let me ask you about the governor of Illinois.
He declared a no-go zone. He declared a no-go zone for ICE.
We are set to hear
How is
from
that not
in just
insurrection?
Stephen, we're set to hear from J.B. Pritzker in just moments. He says that you're attempting to inflame tensions and create a war zone. He also says that you are profiling, that you're targeting black and brown people, even those who turn out to be here legally. What's your response?
Well, first of all, the black people in Chicago are thrilled that we're getting the illegal aliens out of their communities who are stealing their housing, jobs, and resources. You've seen the video of the town halls during the Biden administration where black citizens who are natives of Chicago were begging to have the illegals taken out of their country. What they've done is they've created a system of law.
Yeah, black people love the administration. They love having their cities, their neighborhoods terrorized by even less accountable, even more militarized law enforcement under the suspicion that they are, because of their blackness, that they might be a Haitian migrant. Okay, that's definitely what they were demanding. The black communities were like, please, we want helicopter raids now. Not enough that the Chicago Police Department was beating the out of our neighbors. It's just we want more.
In Chicago, in Illinois, where illegal aliens have far more rights than American citizens. If an American citizen, for example, commits a crime of sexual predation against a child, they'll cooperate with the FBI. If an illegal alien commits a crime of sexual predation against a child, that illegal alien will be shielded in an ICE no-go zone.
What are you talking about? This is so stupid. I can't believe they're still making this idiotic argument, dude. Yeah, definitely. When a Guatemalan migrant does something heinous like that, basically they get away with it scot-free because the cops are like, we're woke. Yeah, the only migrants that engage in sexual predation on U.S. soil that get away scot-free are migrants from Israel. Okay, if you want to talk about an active threat to children, the only time I've seen that shit happen is when you got like a Israeli cybersecurity guy who just openly tells law enforcement, like, hey, by the way, I know you guys caught me in a sting operation trying to fuck a child, okay? But I'm Israeli, and I'm actually going to be leaving for Israel very soon. Please let me go. Not the first time such an incident has taken place, by the way.
I ask you the question, what is the right term to describe a local official declaring a no-go zone for ICE? Would you tolerate it for FBI, ATF, DEA? No, you would not. But there is an effort to delegitimize the core function of the federal government of enforcing our immigration laws.
No. I think the delegitimization of the core function of federal law enforcement is not coming from people like myself. This is the same idiotic argument that, like, Kamala Harris dead enders actually advanced against people like myself, saying like, oh, it's your fault that she lost. It's like, no, it's your actions, dumbass. It's your actions, Stephen Miller. It's your lack of interest in demonstrating any sort of competence or decency, and instead using ICE as your own personal Gestapo to undermine the rule of law and to create chaos in blue cities and in blue states and pack up whoever the f- you want to and engage in mass targeted kidnappings, engaging in dragnets. That is what's unironically making people lose confidence in federal law enforcement. No amount of leftist or liberal commentary is going to actually change that dynamic, especially in the absence of the Democrat leadership pushing this narrative. It's like very obvious that this is homegrown. People's discontent is born out of what they are seeing unfold in broad daylight in front of their eyes. They see an administration behaving in this erratic manner and they get upset. They go, no, I saw the guy that you actually kidnapped. I know that person has a family. That's my neighbor. That's a contributor to this neighborhood. That's a part of our community. And you're just treating him like he's nothing. You're treating him like he is a rapist, bloodthirsty serial beheader or some shit. That's unacceptable. And then they get mad. They get mad and they express their anger. They express their frustration. What is this? Don't tell me that, oh yeah, we already covered this. Don't tell me there's not power in numbers and our resistance of voices do not matter. ICE. Yeah.
And our sovereignty. It is domestic terrorism, it is insurrection, and no amount of insane hyperventilating lies from Pritzker or Johnson or any other Democratic official will change our minds on that. ICE officers should not have to live in fear and violence to do their jobs, period.
So on the substance of the question, is it the case that, as Pritzker frames it, you are profiling brown people that this immigration crackdown is designed to go after people of color?
That is it's such a, oh, what a dumb question.
What a dumb question. Bro, I think Stephen Miller should be on camera more often. I've realized, like, he is such a evil little nerd. I'm realizing that any moment in the spotlight for Stephen Miller is another moment where this administration is going to erode confidence. What a dumb question. Like, you look like a 90s villain. Back when in the 90s, like, all the villains were nerdy. That's what he looks like. He's like that's what he sounds like. Yeah, Dr. Evil looking ass, bro. He unironically sounds and behaves exactly like Dr. Evil.
The illegal aliens who are here are taking jobs away from blacks. They're taking jobs away from whites. They're taking jobs away from Latinos. They're taking their health benefits away. They're taking their school slots away. And of course, in many cases, they're committing heinous crimes. We cannot have a system of law in this country that privileges illegal aliens over American citizens. And that's what they're doing. You know it, and I know it.
So that's not exactly a no, Stephen. Can you just unequivocally state that the immigration policy...
I said it's a dumb question. Okay.
Well, I appreciate that. But
and it's a dumb question.
So no, this policy is not designed to...
I thought when I said it was a dumb question, it meant no.
Well, I just want to be clear and precise. I appreciate you trying to qualify my questions, but nevertheless, I think it's a fair one that a lot of people have.
My full answer is no, that is a lie, and it's a dumb question. But you said something else, speaking to the premise of one of your questions. You said, well, aren't we provoking... Illinois governor says we're provoking actions that are unlawful. Why would the mere presence... Just think about this for a second. If I put federal law enforcement and National Guard into a nice, sleepy southern town, is anyone going to riot? Is anyone going to try to shoot them in the face? Are they going to try to attack them in the street?
They would say full of people in the middle of the night covering their faces without identification, without identifying themselves, there might be concern among the community, especially if American citizens are being... Especially if American citizens are caught up in that, which some reportedly were.
We netted over 30 foreign terrorists who are members of Train
and American citizens also wound up apprehended in that.
They torture women and children. Those American citizens are now safe from Train de Aragua. You know, there was a case recently in Washington State.
But isn't that enough reason for some people to demonstrate and say that they disagree with that policy?
They took a power drill.
Isn't it enough for some people?
Well, by the way.
Hey, Stephen,
first of all, let me finish the story. TDA took a power drill and drilled a hole through a woman's hand.
Understood. Stephen,
her hand.
We have to leave the conversation there because we're short on time, but nevertheless, we do appreciate you making the time for us and coming on CNN and sharing your point of view.
Always.
Those National Guard troops are...
Oh my God, that was awesome. I didn't realize that things like that happened on CNN still. Oh my God. Oh my God. He is so unlikable, dude. It's like the argument that he is presenting requires him to be somewhat likable, at least to like a percentage of the base, you know? But because he has no charisma whatsoever, like he's worse than Donald Trump for sure. What is this? Did you see? I think he might have had a stroke. Yeah, we watched this. Yeah, but I think I was pissing while this part happened.
Blocking the deployment of National Guard in Oregon, illegal insurrection. Does the administration still plan to abide by that ruling?
Well, the administration filed an appeal this morning with the Ninth Circuit. I would note the administration won an identical case in the Ninth Circuit just a few months ago with respect to the federalizing of the California National Guard. Under Title 10 of the U.S. Code, the president has plenary authority.
Stephen? Stephen? Hey, Stephen, can you hear me?
Oh my God.
Stephen, I apologize. It seems like we're having a technical issue. We'll try to fix that. And
oh
get
my
back to you
God.
after a quick break. Stay with CNN.
Oh my God. Did he stroke out? What the? They're resetting the code. Yeah, I hate when the server update. When the server update happens when you're like mid game, you know what I mean? That's what took place, I think. It seems like he got hit. He got hit with a server update. Like they had to put it into safe mode. The president good things never happen. Okay, just remember that.